Hello and welcome to the Road to 2000. I'm Sara Herman and I'll be subbing tonight. I have some games that I've played in the past here that are going to help with your positional decision making and identifying and exploiting weaknesses. I'll probably have to go over this more than one time because people are going to come in, but I want you to remember 3 questions that you need to ask yourself when making decisions. The first being, what are the weaknesses? The second being, what is my worst place piece? And the third is, what is my opponent's idea? So starting out, this game I played in Vegas last year, the National Open. It was during the summer in 2023. And I got paired with my second most played opponent of all time. I had played 29 games with him. We both traveled across the country to play in a national tournament and got paired together. But this is someone I struggle against a lot because of his style clashes with mine. So originally, most of our games were Philidors. He kind of puts his pieces in the same position no matter what you do. And I decided to just go with what I was playing anyway. So d4, knight f6, knight f3, d6, g3, knight d7. So this is what he would do against e4 as well. He just plays e5, bishop e7, and castles, and then he looks up to see what white did. So bishop g2, e5, castles, bishop e7, c4, c6, knight c3, castles, e4, and here my opponent played the move e takes d4, which I thought was probably not very good, and it actually reminds me a lot of King's Indian positions I've gotten before. This is a position I got against Grandmaster Sam Cannon with white, and in this position it's slightly different. The bishop is on g7, not e7, and he played the move knight c5, and the whole position is about putting pressure on e4 and clearing the way of the e5 pawn. Makes more sense here because the bishop on g7 is now alive. And in this position, I played the move h3 and I continue to play chess. But in the order that he did it, it's kind of a lot worse. Even if my opponent should play the move knight c5 here and put pressure on this pawn. And yes, I've played Rhett twice in Vegas. It doesn't even really work here because I can play b4 right away and he has to go back. And this is something, but he played the move knight e5, and I think it's just targeting the wrong pawn. He's targeting the c4 pawn, which can easily be defended by b3. And at this point, normally when you play a move like b3, you're going to put your bishop on b2. But it's not always necessary. Here I just have almost like a Moronzi bind type structure with my knight here on d4. My opponent played queen b6, trying to put pressure on the dark squares, the diagonal against my king, sort of preventing f4 kicking his knight out of that strong square. I just played the move h3. Can anyone tell me the point of h3? Also, Stephen Willie in the chat, I think that this is the game you're thinking of. I'm pretty sure. You've seen this game. G4 square, bishop e3, contesting g4. Yeah, my point behind it was to put my bishop on e3, which makes his queen on b6 look pretty stupid. Because if I were to play bishop e3 right away, he could put a knight on g4 potentially, and I don't really want to trade one of those knights for my bishop. So h3 is just a very common thing to do in Sicilians and all sorts of things to prepare bishop e3. It wouldn't really make as much sense to put my bishop on b2 because then his queen and his pieces make more sense. So h3, a5, bishop e3. I have threats now against the queen discovered. Like knight e6, for example, is already a threat, picking up an exchange. So he has to play queen c7. This move is forced. And now I can play f4. The knight can't jump to g4. He has to make a retreating move, knight to g6. And this is maybe one of the best positions I've ever had out of the opening. All of my pieces are wonderfully placed. I have full control over the center. I'm already castled. My opponent hasn't crossed the 6th rank. I mean, he has, but he had to go backwards. And now I'm just going to make a move here to improve another piece. I don't really want to make any pawn pushes yet, because any pawn push I make will kind of give up control over the center. f5 gives up e5. e5 is just unnecessary and loses a pawn. These could be ideas. So what would you do here with white? Anyone in the live audience have any ideas? Resign is not a good move. Thank you, Twitch chat. Also, there are like probably 5 good moves here, so anything you're feeling might be good if you want to give it a try.
Maybe improve the C knight.
The C knight? Where do you want to put the C knight?
Maybe start rotating him around to E2.
To E2. Yeah, I don't think knight E2 is a bad move. I think it's perfectly fine. Especially if you maybe are wanting to play f5 or something and play knight f4. Perhaps this is a good idea. The only thing I'll say is that I think that the knight on c3 is doing a good job controlling the center and forcing black's pawn structure to stay the way that it is. Because right now, my strong knight on d4 can't be pushed away by c5, because then he gives up control over b5 and d5. And by the way, I said, remember the 3 questions, but we never defined what a weakness is. And it's not incredibly easy to define if you don't already know the definition. So the Twitch chat probably knows, but what is the definition of a weakness? Well, in my understanding, a weakness is purely defined as a square that cannot be defended by a pawn, or specifically a square that can no longer be defended by a pawn. Because on the 2nd rank here, I mean, in the 1st rank, these squares can never be defended by pawns, but they're not weaknesses per se. A square that would be an absolute weakness is if I play knight e2 and black plays the move c5, the b5 square can no longer ever be defended by a pawn, meaning that a piece would love to jump onto that square because it can never be kicked away. And also d5 would be a weakness in this case. d6 would be a weakness and also a backwards pawn, so an even bigger target. And so I think I just, for that reason, like to keep my knight on c3, just so he doesn't have that option. But it's not a bad move. I played rook c1, just putting my rook on the same file as his queen and setting up some sort of, or not even setting anything up, just discouraging any pawn breaks. Because my opponent doesn't have any space right now, so he's very uncomfortable. I kind of scrolled ahead accidentally. But okay, rook e8, I played the move king h2, just another slightly improving move. The idea behind this move, I'm not really sure exactly what it was. It's been a while since I've played this game. Something that you can do when you have such a good position is sort of make quiet moves that don't really do much at all and force your opponent to make a decision. Because if you can't find a good move and you have a good position, think about how hard it's going to be for your opponent to find a good move in a bad position. So my opponent played bishop d7, which, okay, connects the rooks It doesn't improve the bishop at all. You'll notice that all of his pieces are fighting for the same squares, and that's one of the main reasons a lack of space is so bad and so dangerous. I wanted to note here in this position, instead of king h2, or after rook e8 instead of king h2, I really wanted to play the move knight f5 here. Because, okay, knight on f5, knight f5, as Ben Feingold would say. But, okay, it's targeting the d6 pawn. It's just sort of controlling all these dark squares. Black has the option, however, to take on f5. E takes f5, and then knight h8 is forced because he played the move rook e8. Oh, wait. I'm lying. Here I wanted to play it, because then it would be forced to play knight h8. And I liked this, and I liked forcing him to put his knight on h8 because it's the absolute worst square for a knight. But at the same time, I didn't really want to give up one of my knights for this bishop and just trade pieces in general because it'll make his life easier when he has no space. So, okay, but that's why I was making just slow moves instead, because I didn't want to make anything happen. So bishop d7, queen d3, just connecting the rooks, continuing to support the center, and keeping my options open. Bishop f8, and ignore that. Okay, so here, we've done everything we can possibly do. Rooks are connected, king is safe, we have the center, all of the pieces are developed. What now? Is a backwards pawn a weakness? Yes. But it's more complicated than that. Yes, if the engine said I was right, then I did everything right, regardless of my reason for playing a move. Yes, I wonder what the move was. I kind of spoiled it. But okay, without knowing anything, it's kind of hard to come up with a move that only improves the position and doesn't make anything worse. So here is a critical position where I want you to ask the 3 questions to yourself and just try to further figure out what's going on in the position. So number 1, where are the weaknesses? And even if it doesn't feel like an exploitable weakness, because that's the other thing, it's not a weakness unless you can exploit it. So just by definition, does black have any weaknesses? Yes, d6. d6 is weakness number 1. And not only that, there is a pawn on that square. So if we win control over that square, we might win a pawn as well. Yes, b6 is another weakness. Notice they're both on dark squares. b7, I don't know if I'd really count that as a weakness, again, because it's on the 7th, so it was always weak. Those are the main weaknesses. You could even count all of black's pieces as weaknesses because they're so bad and he has no space and they're all fighting for air and for squares. But okay, b6 and d6 are the weaknesses. White doesn't really have any. Certainly no exploitable weaknesses. So at this point, the next question you ask yourself is, what is my worst placed piece? Which is another difficult question when all of your pieces are pretty good. But what would we say the worst placed piece is? So I have suggestions for the knight on c3, the bishop on g2. Here, let's make these different. The queen. Yeah, it's a good problem to have when you're struggling to find a bad piece that you have. So I noticed that no one mentioned the correct piece. The bishop on g2, it cannot be improved. The knight on c3 maybe could be improved, but how? And if this question's too hard, you can always move on to the third one, and you might get some clues about how to answer the second question. So the third question is, what is my opponent's idea? That's a hard question as well, because the position is so bad. If we were to go back to the beginning and say, I want to exploit either b6 or d6, is there a move that jumps out as to how you would do that? And again, wrong answers welcome. E5? Question mark, someone says. Put a question mark on their own move. E5, the only thing in my opinion E5 does is help black, because, okay, when you move a pawn in the center, anytime you move a pawn, this is weaknesses. Every time you move a pawn, you create two weaknesses behind you. So whenever you move a pawn, the two weaknesses beside it, or the squares behind it, become weakened. They're not necessarily weaknesses, because this is still defended, but you are weakening squares. So you have to be really, and also you can't take pawn moves back. They're permanent. So every pawn move needs to be, you need to be absolutely sure. The other thing is you're just sort of trading off this pawn. You're creating more squares and more air for black to breathe. So exploit b6, knight a4 with the dream of knight b6. Okay, so this is a serious idea. And this would be improving what some of you might think is the worst piece. And I looked at knight a4, it was honestly my first thought. But after a move like c5, I don't know, I can play knight b5, takes, and this is a great position, but I just felt like I had more. So that is true. What about, how would we attack the d6 weakness? Knight a4 is an idea. It's something that we'll use at some point. But is there any way to attack the d6 weakness? Knight f5 before knight a4 to unleash more pressure on d6. Yeah, that's always an option that I have. But again, this isn't really a position I want to trade pieces in when my pieces are just worth more than his. And again, he has no space. So it's just sort of helping him out, I think, to do this. Now he has this open file. He has more things to play for. It's something I can do. But moving the knight out of the way, I'll say, yes, it exploits, it does help. So there is a move that you can play that not only exploits b6 as a weakness, d6 as a weakness, and fixes your worst place piece. I see someone said it in the chat, but if anyone in the live audience wants to take a guess. Okay, someone said knight b5 double exclam, that hangs a piece. So that's incorrect. Yes, I see you in the chat. I see you have the right answer. Calm down, stop posting it. All right, spoilers, I actually did spoil the move. It's knight d to e2. Now, why is the knight on d4 the worst piece? Doesn't it look like the best piece? Why on earth isn't that my worst placed piece? My reasoning for this thinking was that the knight's doing absolutely everything it can do from d4, which is just the f5 square. The knight can do that from g3. At the same time, the knight is in the way of the queen and the d file attacking the d6 weakness. It's in the way of b6. If the knight's not here, and I get an extra move and I get to play knight a4, it's maybe even a bit stronger. But so I played the move knight d to e2, which is the best computer move. And this is maybe a move that I'm most proud of in my chess career, because it's just so positional, which in the past I was just horrible at, absolutely horrible. So my opponent now, okay, like find a move for black, it's impossible. But my opponent played a move that made me giggle. He played the move c5, which, okay, I don't know what that arrow means, but it's almost as if my opponent played the move c5 to kick my knight out without actually gaining a tempo, because I wanted to play this anyway. And now he's weakened b5 and d5. And okay, this move makes sense. b6 is a weakness and it's sort of a bad one. But think about it, compare these two positions. So b5 and then possibly putting the knight on b5 here. Or previously, if I had played knight a4 right away, c5 happens, I have to move the knight away, and then the knight's not good here anymore, so I have to move it back to c3 and then in here. And he has time to do things in between all these things. To this position, where I get it for free, I get to make another decision now. So yes, it was hard for him to find a move, but I just thought it was funny that he kicked my knight away, but it's my turn. That's how it felt to me. Okay, so another important move here. This one I won't spoil. White to play. And again, you can ask yourself those three questions again. I think here the important question is, what is my opponent's idea? Because the weaknesses are sort of still the same. b6 kind of a weakness. I would say b7 is more of a weakness now that this is opened up further. But okay, b5 is a newly created weakness, d5 is a newly created weakness, d6 is a pretty big one. Queen d5, b6. What does bishop c? What? Queen d5, bishop c6. Okay, that's nonsense. Yes, the idea behind knight e2 was to play g4 and knight g3, continue to grab space on the king side, maybe think about attacking, put my knight on a square that it's doing the exact same thing it's doing on d4, but also it's not in the way. But here, what is my opponent's idea? Yes, someone says it. a4 is my opponent's idea. I guess I did spoil this. That's what the arrow was. My opponent needs to create counterplay, or he's just going to roll over and die. So if I play a move, I don't know, imagine I play a move, a4, my opponent might be able to create a weakness of his own on b3, and then use the a file as a point of attack, and then if he gets the a file, he might get the second rank, and it's just something I don't need to allow. So what should white play here?
A4?
Yeah, a4, exactly. And this is a principle that my friends and I refer to as the self-service principle. That's just another Twitch user's username, but it just states that if your opponent has a good pawn move, it's probably a good pawn move for you to make as well. And you'll be surprised at how often that's true. So if ever there's a pawn push you're afraid of and you don't want to happen, really consider making that move yourself. So a4 just shuts everything down. He doesn't have any more breaks. He has nothing to improve his position. There's nothing he can do. And he just has to keep shuffling his pieces back and forth. I'm going to be doing the same thing, but the difference is every time I shuffle a piece, it's going to get better and better and better. He has no room for improvement here. Okay, so bishop c6. What else? g4, continuing with my plan to play knight g3. And he played the move knight h4, which was something that I needed to consider before playing g4, again, because when you play g4, you weaken a square behind it, which is h4. So after the move knight h4, what is happening in this position? What is my opponent's idea?
Take the bishop.
Yeah, take the bishop. He wants to trade pieces because he lacks space. And true, then my e-pawn would be weak and harder to defend. So he wants to remove a defender from the e-pawn. He wants to remove one of my good pieces. So yeah, just bishop h1. And now the knight is completely redundant on h4. It's not doing a thing. So I challenge you here to now find a move for black. You don't get to play the fun side anymore. Queen b6. Queen b6 is better than what my opponent played. But the thing is, okay, so like, if he wants to improve this piece, he would have to play g6, bishop g7, which would make this weakness weaker, would take away squares from a knight. If he wants to attack b3, which doesn't really help, again, he has to give up more control over the square. And then I don't know. Maybe I go, feel a bit spoiled for choice here. I could consider knight b5. Don't really want to trade pieces, but I could consider it. The point is it's difficult. g5. Okay, so g5, yes, this is actually something that I was considering in the game. It might even be his only chance. It looks ridiculous. It's just hanging a pawn and pushing pawns in front of your king when you're probably getting attacked. It looks insane. But the point is actually very, very cool. So if f takes g5, knight d7, the point was to get the e5 square for the knight. And okay, the square, all of a sudden a weakness. This pawn is all of a sudden an isolated pawn. So if he gets a knight on e5, it's now an outpost. He also has tactics against the king. And surprisingly, his king's pretty safe. And he only had to give up a pawn for this. So g5 would probably be the best way to play here. Let me check what the computer says. The computer says, okay, g5 is okay, but black is still miserable. And then just cover up the g file, it says. And if knight e5, don't hang your queen. Pretty much any move for white is okay. And then a whole other chess game would start after g5, but he didn't play that. Here my opponent played a move that absolutely shocked me. Absolutely shocked me. Knight takes e4. Spoilers, it's a blunder. But it looks like a blunder, doesn't it? Like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Am I missing something here? Chat, is this real? Like, I almost had a heart attack when he played this. I came back from like looking at my friends' games and I saw this on the board. Keep in mind, I've played 29 rated games with this person. I have a losing record, and I'm winning almost every game I play against him. And the way I always lose is overlooking some ridiculous tactic in a winning position. But I sat there for like 15 minutes and I was like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And I just counted over and over and over again. And I was like, okay, so what? So I take. And okay, here's his point. There's 3 pieces that are like sort of loose. And yeah, maybe queen e7. If he gets another move, queen e7, but even then I think I'm doing fine. Yes, okay. Black blundered, and you might be thinking like, okay, so what's to learn from this? My opponent just gave me a piece. Your opponents will give you pieces a lot more often when they have a position like this, because they're just tired of doing nothing. I even asked my opponent after the game, what was knight e4, and he said, yeah, I knew it didn't work, but I needed something to happen. And this is a 2100 rated player. He was like very close to national master in the past. So, okay, so knight takes e4, takes, rook e8, and let's see, how much time should I spend on this game? Okay, I'm gonna make the rest of the game a little fast because I have another game I want to show. Bishop takes c6, queen takes, and I played the move rook f2, so I don't get checkmated. This is his other tricky little idea. And he actually does have sort of some annoying trick, I remember. bishop e7. So this is my opponent. He wants to play this. Okay, if I do nothing, this move, and if I go here, he has bishop h4 and then king g2, and he wins my queen. So it's like I'm not completely out of the woods here. He's tricky. He's still trying to play for things. So I do have to be very careful, which is why I just played queen d5 to just knock that off. I don't want you to have counterplay. Queen b6, rook c3, defending the b3 pawn over defending the loose bishop on e3. Bishop f6, rook d3, and then, so now this rook's doing everything all at once, everywhere, or something. H6, knight g3. And then this, I made a lot of circles on this position. I think that my point is that every square around my king is defended except for g1, and g1's kind of hard for him to get to, so I felt pretty safe here. G5. Trading pieces is good when you're up material. And then here I had rook f1, yeah. Rook d1, I was gonna say rook f1, which probably isn't as good. And then he just has to go backwards, takes. I'm just gonna get to the final position I think is beneficial. Okay, so here, I really enjoyed how I finished this game. There's 1,000 ways to do it, but I found mine very aesthetically pleasing from an endgame sense. What are our opinions on this position? How would you convert this? Because we're up a rook. Rook e1. Rook e1, and the point is that if he takes me, then I take him, and then I give him checkmate. That makes sense. What if, wait, that's illegal. Not illegal, but it should be. Yeah, it works. Yeah, I mean, you can do it however you want. That was pretty good. I think I just missed that. I feel like if I had seen that, I would have played it. I did the old Daniel queen trade. Daniel's my brother. He's famous for trading queens and raging attacks. But my point was, okay, if here, I don't know, this, then he can't take, and I'm winning. So he has to trade the queens. And then I played the move knight g7. And from an endgame point of view, this is just so much fun because I have this passed h-pawn that's nearly impossible to stop, and the rook, the only open file where the rook would come backwards and defend, it's controlled by the knight. So rook e3, rook g4 here, knight e1, rook h4. So now my idea obviously is h7, and if takes, I just promote. And h7 is the threat as well. So he plays king g8, h7 cannot take because I make queen. So he plays king h8, and then I just play rook e2, and I'm coming in and I'm going to checkmate him. And after the trade, this happened, I suppose, and eventually he resigned. He didn't play till mate. Or maybe he did. Oh, he did play till mate. Wow. I forgot about that. Okay. But then I forced him to make his final move, put himself in stalemate, and then I checkmated him instead of doing it in some other way. So anyway, that was that game. This is better because you gave him hope just to crush it, yes. Okay. All right, the second game I wanted to look at, I played last year. Last year? Yeah, last year in New Mexico, actually. At some FIDE tournament with like 20 players. And the same goes, positional thinking. So d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, g3, bishop e7. Opening's not so important here. Queen c7. Yes, queen c7. I play bishop f4. think typically the bishop's on d6 here, and in structures where you're playing queen c7, the pawn's not on g3, so I can't just get a free tempo automatically. And now, okay, either he has to move his queen away or trade the dark squared bishops, which is bad because all of his weaknesses are on dark squares. So I think normally in this structure you wouldn't ever play the move c5 because it can just be attacked with b6 and then b4 and a5, something like this. You're just setting yourself up for breaks, but here I thought it was reasonable because he doesn't have that dark squared bishop. So queen c7, I played the move b4. The computer thinks is dubious. I have no idea why. Let me refresh myself. Okay, yeah, it just wants me to play e4, which is obviously something to look at, but I didn't like giving him this square, even though I'm getting d6. Oftentimes you'll have exchanges of weaknesses and squares, like, okay, you get this square, I get this square. We both benefit from this, but that doesn't mean it's negative exactly. I just didn't want to give him anything. I played b4 because it's sort of typical in the Catalan to play on the queen side and try to make breaks in the center and use the pressure on the long diagonal. Here it's sort of hard to get in because the structure is so solid. So my opponent plays e5, I go e3, and he should probably just take this, and this is super equal. I think my opponent was a little bit lower rated than me, so I wouldn't have been happy with a draw. So I think he should have done this. But here he played rook e8, rook e1, and e4. Knight d2, and knight f8. Okay, this is a position to think about. What are the weaknesses?
Did you say you played this game in Mexico or New Mexico?
New Mexico.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yes.
B4.
b4? I wouldn't really call that a weakness, because number one, if I wanted to, I can defend it with a pawn. And number two, it can't even really be attacked. You could argue that if a5 happens and I play b5, it becomes a weakness. Because, okay, like, let me make a random move, a5 here. Here I either have to allow black to have this weakness by playing a4 and shoring this up, but if I don't and I play something like a3, then black will play a4. And I'm not saying in this position, I'm just saying in general. And then I'll end up with a weakness on b3. So I get a weakness either way. So it's like a chain reaction. What else? Someone in chat says d6. I agree. And again, with weaknesses, especially ones that are already supported by pawns, those are where you want your pieces to go. If I could get a knight on d6, I'd be like close to winning. So you could call this a weakness. The dark squares in general for black are weak, not only because they're not defended, but because he's lacking that dark squared bishop to defend them. All of my weaknesses are on light squares, and I have a light squared bishop, so it's not as big of a deal. But if he were to, say, trade off the light squared bishops and get a queen in here, I would be in big, big trouble. So that's a goal of his. I think this is the point of knight f8. He's trying to come attack me. And that's the point of locking the center as well. If you can completely clarify and lock the center, so nothing's happening there, I guess clarify is the wrong word, but lock the center, that's often when you're going to be attacking the king. First, you have to take care of things in the center before you can play in the sides. Black looks pretty bad in terms of development. I would agree. I would agree with this. But yeah, you could consider these my weaknesses. Because again, like in some beautiful world, if black got a knight to d3, they would be close to winning. I do think a bigger concern would be trading the light squared bishops and getting attacked like this, because my knight can't come to f3 now and be the so-called hero knight. So I'd have to go like knight f1. It's probably fine, but I wouldn't enjoy it. So I played the move a4, and I think the reason that e5 followed by e4 is really bad is because white was going to play b4, b5 anyway and undermine the pawn structure. And now this pawn is only being defended by the c pawn, so if the c pawn has to leave, then the d pawn becomes weak. So a4 is quite natural. Clearly my play is happening on the queen side anyway. Knight e6. This move, I don't know. I don't know what this move does. Maybe here? That's probably what it does. Yes, because I played the move h4, which is bad. Which I don't think it's obvious why this move is bad. I think this move makes sense if you're trying to stop black's counterplay. Why is h4 bad? G5. Again, like the same thing in the last game. It's like, oh, yeah, it kind of gives black a hook. G5, pushing a pawn in front of the king. But now, okay, how am I to respond? Either I created a hook and I'm going to get attacked like this. I can't push it. And if I take, it's the same thing, but it's worse because it's happening with tempo. I just helped my opponent. So that was a pretty bad move I made. I think I wrote somewhere what my intentions are, but if I tell you my intentions, it'll spoil the next thing that happened. So I'll come back to it. So he didn't play g5. He played the move knight h5. Okay, critical position. There are a lot of things we can use to evaluate a position. What are some things we can use to evaluate a chess position? King safety. Material. Pawn structure. Tempo. Interesting one. I was going to say this is the way I introduced the concept of time, which I'll get to. But that might be what you're talking about. What else? Yeah. Piece activity. That's my favorite one. And space is a big one. There's more. We don't have to go into all of them. But I had recently, when I played this game, I had recently learned of a concept called time in chess, which I think the best way I can describe it is the combination of space and piece activity, or lack of space, and then, so the way you decide who has more time is, okay, you kind of manually check how many legal moves you have versus how many legal moves your opponent has. It's about like options, I suppose. So here, okay, like look at black's bishop compared to white's bishop. Black has one legal move with their bishop. I mean, none of my legal moves are good, but I have more. And same goes for the rest of the pieces. Okay, the rooks, like, they're just not doing that great, and mine have more. And you get these things with space. Black just put the knight on knight on the side of the board, cutting its moves in half. I mean, okay, it couldn't really go anywhere anyway, but the bishop's blocking the knight doesn't have any squares. The only problems that I have are the potentially weak light squares. Those are my only problems. If I can get tons of piece activity and get rid of my weaknesses, and then maybe get some sort of compensation as well, I'll be close to winning. So, okay, someone in the chat is looking at knight takes e4. That's a good thing to look at. So, taking on e4, I guess, yeah, with the d knight makes more sense. Okay, automatically you already get 2 pawns for that piece. You only have to account for that 1 pawn that you're giving up to justify a sacrifice like this. And kind of like what we said, so what am I getting in turn for that pawn? Number 1, the d6 square, our favorite square on the board. What else did I get?
More space.
More space, yes. we took away a lot of black space. And with that, these so-called weaknesses are not weak anymore. My structure is very solid. He put his pieces on really strange squares, specifically to play against the way my pieces were set up. And it doesn't really apply anymore, so now his pieces just look really dumb. But yeah, more solid structure, more, I wouldn't say more king safety, but piece activity and 0 weaknesses. I feel like that's enough for one pawn. And that was the thought process I went through in order to figure out that yes, knight takes e4 is the best move. Another one of my favorite moves I've played. You could play other moves probably and be fine. The top 2 moves, this one and this one, okay. I'd have to create more lines to figure out what another move would be. Because what if I go here? White's doing okay. I mean, oh yeah, that was the other thing. If I don't do it now, black's gonna play f5, and I don't get to do it anymore. So I think the timing of it made a lot of sense. Okay, but I take on e4, I get the d6 square. Black plays knight f8. It wasn't really clear to me what this did. I think that he just wants more space for his pieces to move about, but it's not great. So knight d6, rook e6, b5. And now, not only is this bishop not doing anything, it kind of is now, because it has to defend on the light squares. If the bishop goes away, I can see tactics happening on b7 and take something like that. So he's essentially down a rook and a bishop and a knight and another knight. Meanwhile, all my pieces are gods. So, okay, so he takes on b5. I don't blunder my knight because I'm refined. Knight takes b5, queen d7. And I played the move e4 because I feel that my pawns will be better the further up the board they get. It's a little complicated because also the further you move your pawn up the board, the weaker it gets because pawns are easier to attack from behind. That's why they're not really weaknesses when they're back here, for the most part. Better would be a better move for me to play here. I don't even know.
Put the knight back at this one.
If I put the knight back on d6, maybe he takes it. So what's the material now? I'm not your pal, friend. Yes. Okay. A rook and a pawn for 2 pieces. Usually 2 pieces, better than a rook. I do have a pawn for it. I think white's still better. I certainly didn't know the evaluation of this at the time, but I think I just would rather that he has more problems to deal with and like continue to babysit all of these bad pieces than simplify it, and then possibly end up in a position where he can get back in the game. So I played e4, rook g6. Okay, the next critical position. Weaknesses, worst placed piece. Specifically, what is my opponent's idea? Because my opponent is making a threat, actually. g3. That's an illegal move. What do you mean by g3? Knight takes g3. That is a legal move. So it would be better. So interestingly, yes, that's one of his ideas. I didn't look at that at all. I spent 100% of my time in this position on knight f4. Which hangs a piece. Why would my opponent play knight f4?
With the bishop attacking the bishop.
Yep. Weaken the king, bring in a piece. This bishop's surprisingly difficult to defend. So if I do a nothing move, like I play rook a2, knight f4, and I take here, bishop h3, there's nothing I can do to defend the bishop. there's nothing I can do. The knight's too far away, the rooks are not coordinated, I can't play f3 because I end up losing a queen anyway. So how do we deal with this? There's multiple ways to do it. What's a way?
Queen D2.
Queen d2 is one way with this, yes. I didn't like queen d2. I don't really remember exactly why. What if black plays knight e6 and reinforces that threat? It's not easy. So I didn't really want to use a piece that, like a really high value piece to defend something kind of low value, I suppose. Chat says stop playing with scenes. What does that mean?
I misclicked the wrong one. It was literally, it was less than a second.
I mean, come on guys, just relax a little bit. So I wanted to do more than one thing at a time. Chess is a lot of it's about multi-purpose moves. My way of dealing with the move knight f4 was I wanted to be able to just move my bishop out of the way and not take the knight. I played the move e5, and this does a few things. Okay, so number one, it reintroduces the idea of putting the knight on d6 without even having to worry about and figure out if it's good for him to sack the exchange or not. Now, putting on the knight on d6 would just be incredibly, incredibly strong, because if he takes, I get a strong pass pawn. Number two, it creates a square for the bishop. So he played knight f4 without thinking, really. It's kind of his only idea. After I played the move e5, I then realized that knight g3 is also an idea, and I was like, why didn't I even look at this? It's bad. Like, it's a bad move, but I should have looked at it. It just sort of works out, like takes, and then queen f2, and then like queen takes h4, rook a3, there is. So it works out, but I felt kind of ashamed that I didn't even look at it, because if it had worked, that would have been really unlucky. So he played knight f4, and here is my idea. Now I have bishop e4. So I cleared the way for my light squared bishop, and I'm just gonna make this not a threat anymore, and so he'll have to retreat further. I'm doing this with a tempo as well. He has to make another responsive move. So there's only one square on the board that doesn't hang the rook and also doesn't hang the knight. Rook g4. I'm sure I calculated this as well, because I like calculating, or I used to. And now, what to do? What was the follow-up to this? The rook is almost trapped, or I guess it is if you can attack it. It is still defended by this bishop. Yeah. Chad is saying bishop f5. So this was, I think, one of my ideas. So the problem with bishop f5, insanely, I think is queen takes h4. And this is getting crazy. This is some crazy chess. What is happening here? I don't know. It seems like it, right? Okay, so like if I take here, takes, you still can't take. I don't know. I was scared of this. Okay, so the engine agrees that this is scary. It's not like black's winning or anything, but black's better, and that's not what we want. So I didn't really like bishop f5 that much because of this super annoying move. All of my problems are sort of stemming from the same thing. This pin. So what do we do when we're in a pin? Just move out of it. King f1, another best move. Yeah, I could also put the king over here or something. That just looks wrong to me. I'm sure I'd get mated somehow because I want to move away from the attack. So king f1, and now this is a cool point. It's difficult for black to come up with a move. There is one move that stays in the game. It seems like, okay, my knight is attacked now because this is no longer pinned. I have to move my knight. You don't really want to move it here because two other pieces want that square. So he played the move knight h5, which is bad. But what is another thing that black could do? And again, like, black is technically up material. The disadvantages lie in the lack of development and the lack of space. White already has some poor king safety. Rook takes h4, definitely something to consider. I think if rook takes h4, I take the knight, maybe. Don't fact check me on that. Or do. Because if I take this way, like, yeah, I don't like the look of this at all. I might be fine, but my king is running out of air. But it might be fine. Maybe black gets some sort of perpetual, like queen h3, king g1, queen g4, perpet. Actually, bishop e6 is what black should play. Just not addressing anything that's happening and developing a piece. The point is, I can't really take this. Because after rook takes f4, queen takes is coming in. There's pressure on f2. The light scores are still weak. If the queen moves away, there's bishop c4, trapping the king in this little area over here. And let me check the eval. It's like equal. With this one little mistake from white, it's equal. So bishop e6 is an interesting move. It also prevents d5. And yeah, I mean, looks at the only other like big weakness, I suppose, is why bishop e6 is so strong. My opponent, yeah, just played a normal human move and didn't hang a piece. And I wanted to over-defend everything and bring another piece into the game. You see, yeah, we're running out of time. Okay, rook a3 I played just to shore up everything on the third rank. And it's a flexible move as well, because the rook can now be doubled anywhere I want. So h6, I don't know. I don't know what h6 does. Knight d6, the point is clear. Weak, weak. Knight is God. It's pretty self-explanatory. Now bishop e6. With bishop e6 now I get to play d5. I think we're both low on time at this point. This is his idea. But this does not suffice. And then I think from here I just sort of played well, unfortunately for my opponent. And he resigned here because of pins and pins and also more pins. And also these pawns are pretty good. So, I don't know. In conclusion, it's actually fun to play positionally, I guess is my conclusion. What's your question?
Why didn't bishop to f3 not work when the rook and the knight were kind of lined up?
Forward a few moves.
Bishop f3 here?
No, keep going forward. Yeah.
Oh, here?
Yes.
Maybe it works. Maybe he goes here. I mean, it's probably still good. Like, the position is great. I think, yeah, I think he's, well, hold on, let me actually think about this. He can definitely sack, you think so? Okay. So he wants to take on g3, take, I assume take, and queen h4 is coming. This is attacked. I have to respond to this. I assume queen f2. I wonder if I have time to play. No, I don't. This is attacked. Okay, I probably have to take here. I don't know. I didn't want to allow unnecessary complications when you're winning as well, because that's one of the only ways to mess up a winning position is to get too fancy and not play solid enough. And that's the way I've lost probably 50% of my games, is I try to get fancy. So yeah, bishop h3 coming in. Maybe, let's see. It's black's a little bit better. So apparently my opponent did have counterplay, and if I wasn't careful, but okay. Well, this has been Road to 2000. Next up is Ilya Nizhnik with some class.
With whatever.
With whatever he's doing.
Wait, Ben, should I send you the PGM, or are we good to, or can I use my laptop, or what's?
Send me the PGM.
Send it. Okay, sure.
I don't. What's the class next?
Grandmaster's choice.
Oh, it's Grandmaster's choice. So it really is whatever Ilya decides. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching and chatting, and also for the in-person audience. I'll see you next time.